When I think back to the moment that changed everything, it all feels like a strange dream that unfolded in slow motion. My name is Emily Carter, and I've been married to my husband, Michael, for 7 years. Michael has a son from his first marriage, Daniel, who is now 20 years old. From the moment I entered their lives, I wanted to be more than just Dad's new wife. I wanted to be a supportive figure, a woman Daniel could respect and maybe even lean on whenever life felt heavy. At first, things were good. Daniel was polite, sometimes distant, but always respectful. I thought he would eventually open up to me. What I never expected was how complicated our relationship would become over time, or how one ordinary family trip would spark emotions that none of us were prepared for. It was a late summer afternoon when Michael suggested we drive out of town for the weekend. He thought it would be nice for the three of us to reconnect away from the stress of work and city noise. We packed light, just a couple of bags and snacks for the road. Michael insisted on driving, as he always did, and Daniel happily claimed the front passenger seat, leaving me in the back. But when we reached the car, I realized that the back seat was crammed with bags and camping gear. Michael shrugged, saying we hadn't packed smartly. There wasn't enough space for me to sit comfortably. That's when Daniel, with a half smile, patted his lap and said, "You can sit here. It's just a short ride to the cabin, right?" Michael laughed, brushing it off as a harmless solution. I hesitated, feeling awkward, but eventually climbed in. After all, what choice did I have? At first, it felt innocent. Just a practical arrangement. But as the miles passed, I noticed every small detail, the firmness of Daniel's posture, the steady rhythm of his breathing, and the way his voice sounded when he spoke to his father. I tried to distract myself by looking out the window, but I couldn't shake the awareness of where I was sitting. That short drive planted the first seeds of something I couldn't quite name. The weekend at the cabin was supposed to be about family bonding. We cooked meals together, played cards by candlelight, and even hiked a nearby trail. On the surface, everything looked picture perfect. But underneath, I felt a growing sense of unease. Daniel had begun watching me differently. His glances lingered longer than before, and sometimes when Michael wasn't paying attention, I caught Daniel's eyes on me, unreadable but intense. One night, while Michael stepped outside to take a phone call, Daniel and I were left alone in the living room. The silence was heavy, broken only by the crackling fireplace. He asked me how I was doing, not in the casual way you'd expect from a young man, but in a way that made me feel seen. Truly seen. I mumbled something about being fine, but deep inside, I wasn't. My marriage with Michael had been under quiet strain for a while. He worked long hours, often came home exhausted, and our conversations had shrunk down to practicalities, bills, groceries, schedules. The intimacy we once shared had faded, leaving me lonely in ways I didn't want to admit. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed to notice me in ways my husband no longer did. That realization terrified me. And yet, it also pulled me closer to him emotionally. Over the following weeks, small things began to change. If Michael asked Daniel to run errands, he invited me along. At first, I thought nothing of it. But those car rides reminded me of that day I had sat on his lap. The memory lingered in my mind, tugging at me in ways I couldn't explain. One afternoon, we were returning from the grocery store when it began to rain heavily. We sat in the car, waiting for the downpour to ease. The air was charged with an unspoken tension. He turned to me and said softly, "Do you ever feel like people don't see the real you?" I froze. Because that was exactly how I felt in my marriage. Unseen. Invisible. Without meaning to, I opened up to him about my loneliness, my doubts, my quiet sadness. He listened, really listened, in a way Michael hadn't in years. His empathy made me feel lighter, but also dangerously exposed. The guilt began creeping in. I reminded myself that Daniel was Michael's son, that I was supposed to be a mother figure to him. But the boundaries between us were blurring, and every time I told myself to pull back, something kept drawing me in again. It wasn't about physical attraction alone. It was about connection, emotional, undeniable, and risky. As weeks turned into months, I noticed Michael becoming more distant. He seemed unaware of the subtle changes in the household. He would often retreat to his office, leaving Daniel and me to share conversations over dinner or laughter during late-night TV shows. Slowly, Daniel became my confidant. But secrets have a way of catching up with you. One evening, Michael came home earlier than usual. He walked into the living room to find Daniel and me sitting close together on the couch, our heads bent over a photo album. It was innocent enough, but Michael's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What's going on here?" he asked, his tone sharp. I felt a rush of panic. Nothing had happened yet, not in the way he was imagining, but the guilt in my heart made it impossible to meet his eyes. Daniel quickly explained that we were just looking at old family pictures. Michael didn't say much after that, but his mood shifted noticeably. He grew more watchful, more distant, and less trusting. The fragile balance we had been maintaining began to crumble. In the days that followed, I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me wanted to confess everything, not because anything physical had happened, but because emotionally, I had crossed lines I shouldn't have. The other part of me wanted to bury it deep, to pretend nothing was wrong and move forward as though nothing had happened. But the truth is, secrets eat at you from the inside out. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. One Sunday morning, I sat Michael down. My voice trembled as I told him how lonely I had felt, how I had found myself confiding in Daniel more than in him. I admitted that I had let my heart wander in ways that were wrong, even if nothing physical had happened. Michael listened silently. His face went pale, and his jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt me. When I finally stopped talking, tears in my eyes, he sighed heavily. "Emily," he said slowly, "you should have come to me. Not him. Me." Those words cut deeper than I expected. Because he was right. That conversation didn't fix everything overnight. It was the beginning of a painful, messy process. Michael suggested counseling, and though I felt ashamed, I agreed. Daniel, realizing the situation had gone too far, distanced himself. He spent more time with his friends, avoiding the house whenever possible. Therapy was hard. Facing the truth was harder. But gradually, Michael and I began to rebuild what we had lost. It wasn't about forgetting what happened, it was about learning from it. I had to confront the reasons why I had drifted toward Daniel in the first place, and Michael had to recognize the ways he had pulled away from me emotionally. The road to healing wasn't smooth, but it was real. And over time, I discovered something important. Infidelity isn't always about physical betrayal. Sometimes, it's about where your heart goes when it feels unseen. Looking back now, I realize that moment in the car, the day I sat on Daniel's lap, wasn't just a practical solution to a does.